Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Our first story is titled, "My wife's ex-husband tried to manipulate our children against me." It all started about 3 years ago. I had been dating Michelle a little over a year, and things were getting serious. She had 2 kids from her previous marriage, Tommy, who was 10 at the time, and Josephine, who was 8. They were great kids, and I really enjoyed spending time with them. Michelle had been divorced from their dad, Mark, for about 2 years when we met. At first, I was nervous about seeing someone who had kids from a previous relationship, but it ended up working out. As a matter of fact, it got to the point where the kids felt like my own biological kids. We felt like a family, and that was all I had ever wanted in life. At first, everything seemed fine. Mark was civil enough when we ran into each other at school events or during kid drop-offs. He would give me a nod or a quick hey, and that was about it. I figured that was normal. I mean, what guy wants to be best friends with the new man in his ex-wife's life, right? He was civil. That was more than most people in his position. We had dated for about a year when Michelle and I got married in a small ceremony. The kids were there, of course, and they seemed excited about it. Tommy even gave a little speech at the reception saying he was happy his mom had found someone who made her smile again. It was definitely an emotional moment for me. I loved Michelle and I wanted her kids to be comfortable with my presence in their life. It was a perfect day and I thought we were on our way to being one big, happy, blended family, but that soon changed. It started small. Tommy would come home from weekends at his dad's house and be a little distant. At first, I did not think much of it. Kids have moods, right? But then I started noticing a pattern. Every time the kids came back from Mark's, they would be a little colder towards me. They would ignore me when I asked about their weekend or give one-word answers. One night, after the kids had gone to bed, I brought it up with Michelle. "Hey, have you noticed anything off with the kids lately?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. Michelle looked up from her book, her brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" I shrugged, feeling a little silly for even bringing it up. "I don't know. It is just they seem different when they come back home from Mark's, like they're upset with me or something." Michelle put her book down and sighed. "Now that you mention it, I have noticed they've been a bit quieter lately. Do you think something is going on?" "I'm not sure," I admitted, "but it's starting to worry me. Maybe they're still adjusting to having a stepdad. I mean, it's been a while, but they're just kids after all." Little did I know this was just the beginning. The next weekend, when Michelle went to pick up the kids from Mark's house, she overheard something that made her blood run cold. As she walked up to the front door, she could hear Mark's voice through the open window. "Remember, kids," he was saying, "Dave's not your real dad. He is just some guy your mom married. You don't have to listen to him or do what he says." Michelle was furious. She burst through the door, startling Mark and the kids. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she demanded. Mark had the decency to look embarrassed, but he quickly covered it with a smug smile. "Just having a little chat with my kids. Is that a crime? I'm allowed to do that, you know." "It is when you're trying to turn them against their stepfather," Michelle shot back. The kids looked confused and upset. Josephine was on the verge of tears, and Tommy just stared at the floor. "Come on, kids," Michelle said, trying to keep her voice calm. "It's time to go home." The car ride home was tense. Michelle tried to talk to the kids about what they had heard, but they were quiet and withdrawn. When we got home, I could tell something was wrong. Michelle pulled me aside and told me what had happened. I was shocked. I mean, I knew Mark was not my biggest fan, but I never thought he would stoop so low as to try and manipulate the kids against me. It felt like a punch to the gut. "What are we going to do?" I asked Michelle, feeling helpless. She squeezed my hand. "We're going to talk to the kids. We need to be honest with them and make sure they understand the situation." We sat Tommy and Josephine down in the living room. They looked nervous, like they were about to be scolded. "Kids," Michelle said gently, "we need to talk about what your dad said earlier." Tommy's head snapped up. You heard that? Michelle nodded. I did, and I want you both to know that what he said wasn't okay. Josephine's lower lip trembled. But Dad said Dave's not our real dad. Is that true? My heart broke a little at her words. I looked at Michelle, unsure of what to say. Michelle took a deep breath. Josephine, sweetie, Dave isn't your biological father. That is true. But being a dad is more about than just biology. It's about loving and caring for you, which is exactly what Dave does. I nodded, finding my voice. I may not be your biological dad, but I love you both very much, and I'm committed to being here for you, no matter what. Tommy looked conflicted. But Dad said we don't have to listen to you. I leaned forward, meeting his eyes. Tommy, your mom and I are a team. We make decisions together about what is best for you and Josephine. When you are in this house, we expect you to follow our rules and respect both of us. But that does not mean we are trying to replace your dad. There is room for all of us to work together. I have a lot of respect for your parents, you know. They brought you into this world after all. The conversation went on for a while. We answered their questions as honestly as we could and tried to reassure them that they were loved and that it was okay to care about both Mark and me. By the end, they seemed a little less confused, but I could tell this was not going to be a quick fix. Over the next few months, things got worse. Mark became bolder in his attempts to undermine me. He would send the kids home with new toys or gadgets, telling them they could not use them at our house because Dave wouldn't allow it. He would plan exciting outings on days when we had important family events scheduled, forcing the kids to choose. It was just plain wrong. Michelle was smart enough to start documenting these instances in case we ever had to take legal action or go to court. But of course, it would be hard to prove regardless. It was taking a toll on all of us. The kids were constantly torn and stressed. Michelle was angry and frustrated. And me, I felt like I was walking on eggshells in my own home, always worried that I would say or do something that Mark could twist to make me look bad. The kids were suffering, and I did not want to do anything to make that even worse. It was terrible. At one point, it even crossed my mind that if I left Michelle, it would be better for her and the kids. But then I realized that Mark would do this to the next guy as well. It just felt like there was no winning no matter what I did, and I hated that feeling. One night after a particularly rough week, Michelle and I were up late talking. I can't take this anymore, Michelle said, her voice cracking. He's hurting the kids with his manipulative behavior. We need to do something. I nodded, feeling a mix of anger and determination. You're right, but what? We can't control what he says to them when they're with him. Michelle was quiet for a moment, then said, maybe we need some outside help. What about family counseling? It was a good idea. We found a therapist who specialized in blended families and started weekly sessions. Dr. Anderson was great. She helped us develop strategies for talking to the kids about the situation and gave us tools to help them cope with the conflict. One of the most helpful things she suggested was creating a family mission statement, a set of values and goals that we all agreed on. We sat down with Tommy and Josephine and worked on it together. It included things like, in our family, we respect each other, and we communicate openly and honestly. We hung it up in the kitchen as a daily reminder. The counseling was helping, but Mark's behavior was not improving. If anything, he was getting worse. He started telling the kids that Michelle and I were trying to keep them away from him, that we did not want them to love him anymore. It made the kids wary of the counseling sessions, and that felt like such a punch to the gut after we had started making progress. I could not really blame them, though. They were just kids trying to make sense of a crazy situation around them. It all came to a head one Sunday afternoon. Tommy had a big soccer game, and we were all there to cheer him on. Mark showed up too, which was not unusual, but this time he came with a woman I had never seen before. During our break in the game, I overheard Mark talking to Tommy. See that lady over there? Mark was saying. That's Linda. She is going to be your new mom soon. Isn't that great? Tommy looked confused and upset. But I already have a mom and Dave. Mark cut him off. Dave's not your real family, Tommy. Linda and I are your real family. Don't you want a real family? That was it. I had had enough. I marched over to Mark, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. We need to talk, I said, my voice low and controlled. Now. Mark smirked. What's the matter, Dave? Feeling insecure. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that causing a scene at Tommy's soccer game would not help anyone. This has to stop, Mark. You're hurting the kids with all this manipulation. Mark's smirk fell away, replaced by a scowl. I'm their father. I have the right to tell them whatever I want. No, I said firmly, you don't. Not when it is causing them emotional distress. We are going to sit down and work this out like adults, or we are going to let a judge decide what is in the best interest of the kids. We've been documenting everything. I did not want to threaten legal action, but at this point, I did not know what to do. Mark's face paled a little at that. I did not think he realized how serious the situation had become. Fine, he spat. We'll talk, but not here. We agreed to meet the following weekend with Michelle present. In the meantime, Michelle and I had a lot of discussions about how to handle the situation. We also had an emergency session with Dr. Anderson to get her advice. The day of the meeting arrived. We decided to have it on neutral ground, a quiet corner of a local coffee shop. Mark arrived, looking defensive, his arm crossed over his chest. All right, he said as soon as he sat down. What's this all about? Michelle took the lead. Mark, we need to talk about your behavior towards Dave and how it's affecting the kids. Mark scoffed. My behavior? I'm not the one trying to replace their real parent. I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. No one is trying to replace you, Mark, but your attempts to turn the kids against me are hurting them. They're confused and stressed, and it needs to stop. The kids are fine, Mark insisted. They're just adjusting. Michelle shook her head. They're not fine, Mark. They are in counseling because of the stress this is causing them. Do you really want that for Tommy and Josephine? That gave Mark pause. For a moment, his tough guy facade cracked, and I could see genuine concern in his eyes. Counseling? He asked, his voice softer. I didn't know. Michelle nodded. Yes, counseling, because they are torn between loving you and accepting Dave. They feel like they have to choose, and it's tearing them apart. Mark was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. It was obvious our words influenced him, and the wheels were turning in his mind. I never meant to hurt them. I was afraid of losing them. It was a breakthrough moment. For the first time, I saw Mark not as an antagonist, but as a father who was scared and lashing out. It did not excuse his behavior, but it helped me understand it. You're not losing them, Mark, I said gently. They love you. Nothing will change that. But they have room in their hearts for me too. It does not have to be one or the other. And it is not fair to manipulate them into choosing sides or anything like that. They're just kids. We talked for hours that day. We set some ground rules about how we should communicate with the kids and with each other. We agreed to stop bad-mouthing each other and to present a united front when it came to important decisions about the kids' lives. It was not an instant fix. Old habits die hard, and there were still bumps in the road. I was still cautious of Mark, and to be honest, I always would be, but it was a start. Over the next few months, things slowly began to improve. Mark stopped his overt attempts to turn the kids against me. He even tried to be civil at school events and kid exchanges. The kids noticed the change too. They seemed more relaxed, less like they were walking on eggshells. Tommy started talking to me about his soccer games again, and Josephine asked me to help her with her science project, something she had not done in months. One night as I was tucking Josephine into bed, she looked up at me with those big brown eyes of hers and said, Dave, I'm glad you're my stepdad. I felt a lump form in my throat. I'm glad too, kiddo, I managed to say, giving her a hug. It was not all smooth sailing from there, of course. We still had our challenges. Mark sometimes slipped back into old habits, and we had to remind him of our agreement. The kids still had moments of confusion or conflicted loyalty, but we were making progress. We continued with family counseling, which helped us navigate the ongoing challenges of our blended family. Dr. Anderson praised our efforts and the improvements she saw in the kids' behavior and emotional state. About 6 months after our big confrontation with Mark, we decided to have a family barbecue. And when I say family, I mean all of us, Michelle and me, the kids, and yes, even Mark. It was a bit awkward at first, but as the afternoon wore on, things relaxed. Tommy convinced Mark and me to play a game of catch with him, and for a while it felt normal. As the sun was setting and Mark was getting ready to leave, he pulled me aside. "Listen, Dave," he said, looking uncomfortable but determined. "I owe you an apology. What I did, trying to turn the kids against you, it was wrong. I was scared and jealous, but that is no excuse. You're good to them, and they're lucky to have you." I was stunned. I never expected to hear those words from Mark. "Thank you," I said, meaning it. "That means a lot." He nodded and then added with a small smile, "Don't get me wrong, I am the cooler dad, but you're not so bad." I laughed. "I'll take it." As I watched Mark drive away that evening with Tommy and Josephine waving goodbye from our front porch, I felt a sense of peace I had not experienced in a long time. We were not a perfect family by any means, but we were making it work. Michelle came up beside me and slipped her hand into mine. "You okay?" she asked. I smiled and squeezed her hand. "Yeah, I think we're going to be all right." And you know what? We were. It had been quite the wild ride, and at times a touchy subject, since I technically was not their biological dad. But at the end of the day, I was just as much as their father as Mark. Honestly, if not even more. The kids are teenagers now, and we had not had a real issue with Mark in years. I'm glad we ended up working everything out, because I was genuinely scared at one point I would have had to end things with Michelle. What Mark put us through, Michelle and the kids, was not fair, and while things will never be 100%, we are doing the best we can co-parenting, and the kids are excelling. Cannot ask for much else, right? Commentary. Wow, what a story. Here are my thoughts about the entire situation. It is never easy being a step-parent, so I applaud Dave for sticking through the thick and thin with Michelle and the kids. I cannot say I would be that understanding or patient. It can be hard to balance being a good step-parent without crossing over any boundaries. However, in this case, it sounds like Mark was one overstepping boundaries. It is hard to believe that some adults cannot communicate properly. Mark would have been in the right to be cautious and wary of a new person around his children, but if he had actual concerns about it, he could have just communicated them to Michelle. Getting the kids involved is messy, and I am surprised that both Michelle and Dave forgave him, although Michelle would have more reason to, as she is their biological mom. In the end, at least, they were all able to work things out. It is the kids that matter after all. And now, guys, we will move on to the second story of the video. Please like the video if you have enjoyed it so far. The story starts like this. My husband's ex-wife tried to use our kids to sabotage our marriage. When I married Greg 5 years ago, I knew there would be challenges blending our families. But I never imagined his ex-wife, Brianna, would go to such extreme lengths to try to destroy our marriage and turn the kids against us. Let me back up and give you some context. I'm Isabella, 38 years old, and I work as an elementary school teacher. I met Greg, 42, at a mutual friend's barbecue about 7 years ago. We hit it off immediately. He was charming, funny, and we discovered we had a lot in common. Greg works as an architect and has 2 kids from his previous marriage, Lily, who's 12, and Ben, who's 9. Greg had been divorced from Brianna for about 2 years when we met. Their marriage had ended because Brianna cheated on Greg multiple times. He was devastated when he found out, but tried to make it work for the kids' sake. Eventually, though, he realized he couldn't trust her anymore and filed for divorce. The first couple years Greg and I were together, things were relatively smooth with Brianna. She seemed to accept that Greg had moved on, and we all tried to co-parent amicably for the kids' sake. Greg and I got married, and I embraced my new role as stepmom to Lily and Ben. I have a daughter of my own, Zoe, who's 7 from a previous relationship. My ex isn't really in the picture, so Greg has become like a father to her. But about a year ago, everything changed. Brianna got dumped by the guy she'd been seeing, and suddenly she seemed fixated on trying to win Greg back. At first, it was just small things, calling or texting him constantly about the kids, even for trivial matters. She started showing up at our house unannounced to drop off things for the kids. I tried to be understanding at first. I knew Brianna was probably feeling vulnerable after her breakup, but as her behavior escalated, it became clear she had ulterior motives. One day, Greg came home from work looking stressed. When I asked what was wrong, he hesitated before telling me that Brianna had sent him a long email reminiscing about their marriage and saying she regretted ever cheating on him. She told Greg she still had feelings for him and wanted to try again for the sake of their family. I was stunned. "What did you say to her?" I asked Greg. He sighed. "I told her in no uncertain terms that I'm happily married to you and have no interest in getting back together with her. I said we need to keep our relationship focused solely on co-parenting the kids." I was relieved to hear Greg's response, but I knew this was just the beginning of Brianna's attempts to come between us. Sure enough, Brianna's manipulations quickly escalated. She started telling Lily and Ben that Greg and I were having relationship problems. She'd say things like, "I heard Daddy and Isabella fighting last night. Are they okay?" Even though it wasn't true. The kids would come home from Brianna's house and ask us if we were getting divorced. It broke my heart to see how confused and anxious they were. Greg and I sat them down and assured them that we were happy and there were no problems in our marriage. We explained that sometimes adults disagree or have arguments, but that doesn't mean they're going to break up. But Brianna was relentless. She started coaching the kids to act out when they were at our house. Lily began talking back and being disrespectful, especially to me. Ben threw enormous tantrums over small things. When Greg would discipline them, Brianna would swoop in as the good cop, undermining our parenting. One night, I overheard Lily on the phone with Brianna. My stepdaughter was crying, saying she didn't want to live with us anymore and wanted to stay with Brianna full time. Brianna was telling her, "I know, sweetie, don't worry. Mommy's going to fix everything soon. You'll be back home with me before you know it." I was furious. I told Greg what I'd heard, and he confronted Brianna about it. She played innocent, claiming she was just comforting Lily and had no intention of changing the custody arrangement. But we knew better. Brianna's tactics became increasingly manipulative. She started buying the kids lavish gifts every time they visited her, things Greg and I couldn't afford. When Lily mentioned wanting an expensive new phone, Brianna immediately bought it for her, even though Greg and I had said she was too young. It was a constant battle to maintain our rules and the values in the face of Brianna's indulgence. We tried to explain to the kids that love isn't about buying things, but it was hard for them to understand, especially when Brianna was filling their heads with the opposite message. Brianna also began interfering with our family activities. Whenever we planned a special outing or vacation, she would suddenly have some emergency or special event that required the kids' presence. She'd guilt-trip them, even if they chose to stick to our plans instead. One time, we had tickets to a concert that Lily had been excited about for months. The day before, Brianna called Lily in tears, saying she was lonely and really needed her daughter with her that weekend. Lily was torn, feeling guilty about leaving her mom alone. We ended up missing the concert because Lily was too upset to go. The manipulation extended to school events too. Brianna would show up uninvited to parent-teacher conferences or school plays, trying to exclude me. She'd introduce herself to teachers and other parents as Lily and Ben's mom, pointedly ignoring my presence. It was awkward and uncomfortable for everyone, especially the kids. Brianna even started trying to turn Zoe against me. She'd make comments to my daughter like, "It must be hard having to share your mom with Lily and Ben. I bet you wish you had her all to yourself like before." Zoe would come home confused and clingy, suddenly worried that I loved Lily and Ben more than her. Things came to a head a few months later. Greg and I had planned a weekend getaway to celebrate our anniversary. We'd arranged for my parents to watch the kids, but at the last minute, Brianna claimed there was a family emergency and she needed the kids that weekend. Reluctantly, we agreed to let them go to Brianna's instead. We should have known it was a trap. When we picked up Lily and Ben on Sunday evening, they were acting strange, quiet and withdrawn. Finally, Ben blurted out, "Mom told us that Daddy doesn't really love Isabella. She said he's only with her because of Zoe." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Greg was livid. "That is absolutely not true," he told the kids firmly. "I love Isabella very much. Your mom should not be saying things like that to you." Lily piped up then, "But Mom said you told her you made a mistake marrying Isabella. She said you guys are getting back together." Greg and I were speechless. We realized Brianna had spent the entire weekend filling the kids' heads with lies, trying to turn them against me and plant seeds of doubt about our marriage. As we dug deeper, we uncovered more of Brianna's manipulations from that weekend. She had shown the kids old photo albums and videos from when she and Greg were married, telling them stories about how happy they were and how their family was broken now. She had also staged a fake phone call with one of her friends while the kids were in earshot. In the call, she pretended to be comforting the friend about a cheating spouse, making pointed comments about how people who break up families never end up happy. It was clearly aimed at making the kids think negatively about me. Perhaps most disturbingly, Brianna had tried to coach Ben to say that he felt uncomfortable around me. She told him that if he said I had touched him inappropriately, she could make sure he never had to see me again. Thankfully, Ben was confused by this and told us about it, but we were horrified that Brianna would stoop so low. That was the final straw for us. We knew we needed to take action to protect our family from Brianna's manipulations. The next day, Greg called our lawyer to discuss our options. Our lawyer advised us to document everything, every manipulative comment, every attempt to alienate the kids, every instance of Brianna bad-mouthing us. We started keeping a detailed log and saving any relevant texts or emails. We also decided to start family counseling. We wanted to give the kids a safe space to process their emotions and work through the conflicting messages they were getting. Our counselor was amazing with the kids. She helped them understand that it's normal to have complicated feelings when your parents aren't together, but that didn't mean they had to take sides. Meanwhile, Brianna's behavior was becoming more and more erratic. She started showing up at Greg's office, crying and begging him to take her back. She left rambling voicemails at all hours of the night. One particularly disturbing incident happened when Brianna came to our house unannounced, clearly intoxicated. She started screaming at me, calling me horrible names and accusing me of stealing her family. Greg had to physically restrain her while I called the police. The kids were terrified, hiding in their rooms. It was awful. After that, we got a restraining order against Brianna. She was no longer allowed to come to our home or Greg's workplace. All communication had to go through our lawyers or a court-appointed parenting coordinator. Brianna didn't take this well. She started posting nasty things about us on social media, trying to paint herself as the victim. She even created a website dedicated to exposing the truth about Greg and me. It was full of wild accusations and out-of-context photos trying to prove that Greg was unhappy with me. We were worried about how this might affect Greg's business, but thankfully, his clients and colleagues knew him well enough to see through Brianna's lies. Still, it was incredibly stressful dealing with the fallout. Brianna's attempts to manipulate the kids continued, even with the restrictions in place. She would send them secret cell phones to communicate with her when they were at our house. We'd find Lily texting Brianna late at night, getting more lies and guilt trips fed to her. During her supervised visits, Brianna would try to sneakily whisper things to the kids when the supervisor wasn't paying close attention. She told Ben that if she misbehaved enough at our house, he'd get to come live with her. This led to a week of Ben acting out horribly until we finally got him to admit why he was doing it. Brianna also started using social media to get to the kids. She would post long, emotional messages about how much she missed them and how cruel it was that she couldn't see them more. She knew Lily had a secret Instagram account and would tag her in those posts, knowing Lily would see them and feel guilty. At one point, Brianna convinced her parents, the kids' grandparents, to get involved. They started calling us, berating us for keeping the kids from Brianna. They would tell Lily and Ben that we were being mean to their mom and that they should speak up about wanting to live with her. It put a strain on the kids' relationship with their grandparents, which was hard for them. The manipulation even extended to the kids' friends and their parents. Brianna would contact other parents in the kids' classes, telling them sob stories about how we were keeping her from her children. This led to some parents treating us coldly at school events or telling their kids not to play with Lily and Ben. It was isolating for the kids and frustrating for us. Holidays became a battleground. Brianna would promise the kids extravagant trips and gifts if they spent holidays with her instead of us. One Christmas, she told the kids she was planning to take them to Disneyland, but only if they spent the whole break with her. When we insisted on sticking to the custody agreement, she blamed us for ruining Christmas, causing both kids to have meltdowns on what should have been a happy day. The final straw came when we discovered Brianna had been secretly recording her phone calls with the kids, trying to get them to say negative things about us on tape. She was planning to use these recordings in court to try to get full custody. Fortunately, our lawyer was able to get those recordings thrown out as evidence since they were obtained illegally. But it was clear Brianna wasn't going to stop unless we took more serious action. We decided to file for a modification of the custody agreement. We were seeking full physical custody, with Brianna only having supervised visitation. It was a drastic step, but we felt it was necessary to protect the kids from her manipulations. The day of our court hearing arrived. I was a nervous wreck, my stomach in knots as we waited for our case to be called. Greg squeezed my hand reassuringly. "It's going to be okay," he whispered. "We've got this." Brianna showed up with her lawyer, shooting daggers at us with her eyes. When it was our turn to present our case, our lawyer methodically laid out all the evidence of Brianna's attempts to alienate the children and sabotage our marriage. We had a thick binder full of documentation. The log we kept, printed copies of Brianna's harassing messages and social media posts, police reports from her drunken tirade at our house, and statements from Dr. Roberts about how Brianna's behavior was affecting the kids. I had to testify about how Brianna's actions had impacted our family. It was nerve-wracking being on the stand, but I took a deep breath and spoke from the heart. I went on to detail specific incidents, how Brianna had tried to get Ben to falsely accuse me of inappropriate behavior, how she'd manipulated Lily's emotions with late-night phone calls and social media posts, how she'd interfered with school events and family outings. The kids are constantly walking on eggshells, I explained. They're afraid to show any happiness or contentment in our home because they know Brianna will make them feel guilty about it. They're carrying a burden that no child should have to bear. Greg testified as well, his voice thick with emotion as he described how painful it was to see his children caught in the middle of this conflict. "I've tried so hard to co-parent peacefully with Brianna," he told the court, "but every attempt at compromise or cooperation is twisted into another opportunity for her to try to drive a wedge between me and the kids or between me and Isabella. It's like she's made it her mission to destroy our family." He recounted incidents he hadn't even known about, times Brianna had shown up at his office causing scenes in front of his coworkers, how she'd contacted his clients trying to sabotage his business relationship, the constant barrage of emails and texts oscillating between love declarations and vicious threats. "I'm worried about the long-term effects this is having on Lily and Ben," Greg said, his voice cracking. "They are internalizing so much guilt and anxiety. I'm afraid that if this continues, it will damage their ability to form healthy relationships in the future." When it was Brianna's turn, she tried to paint herself as a loving mother who just wanted more time with her kids. But under cross-examination, she quickly unraveled. She couldn't explain away the mountain of evidence showing her inappropriate behavior. At one point, she burst into tears and started ranting about how Greg was her soulmate and I had stolen him for her. The judge had to call a recess to let her compose herself. After hearing all the testimony, the judge took a short break to review everything before making her ruling. Those 20 minutes felt like an eternity as we waited anxiously. Finally, the judge returned to deliver her decision. She didn't mince words, addressing Brianna sternly. "Your behavior over the past year has been completely unacceptable. You have consistently put your own selfish desires above the well-being of your children. The evidence clearly shows a pattern of parental alienation and a blatant disregard for court orders." Brianna's face crumbled as the judge continued. "Therefore, I am granting the modification of custody as requested. You will have supervised visitation twice a month, pending completion of intensive therapy and parenting classes. I'm also ordering you to undergo a psychological evaluation." The judge went on to outline specific stipulations. Brianna was to have no contact with the kids outside of the supervised visits, including no phone calls, text, or social media interactions. She was barred from attending school events or extracurricular activities unless specifically invited by Greg or me. Any violation would result in further restriction of her visitation rights. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Greg wrapped his arm around me, tears in his eyes. Brianna let out an anguished wail. "You can't do this! They're my babies!" As we left the courthouse, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief, sadness for the kids, even a twinge of sympathy for Brianna. But mostly I felt hopeful that we could finally start healing as a family. The next few months were an adjustment period for all of us. Lily and Ben struggled with guilt over not seeing their mom as much. We continued family therapy to help them process everything. Gradually, things started to improve. Without Brianna's constant influence, the kids' behavior got much better. They seemed happier and more relaxed. To our surprise, the mandated therapy actually seemed to be helping Brianna. Her supervised visits went well, and she was making an effort to respect boundaries. She even apologized to Greg and me for her behavior, though I was hesitant to fully trust her intentions. 6 months after the custody change, we had a follow-up hearing. Brianna's therapist testified that she'd made significant progress in addressing her issues. While she wasn't ready for unsupervised visits yet, the judge did increase her visitation time slightly. It's been about a year since that first court hearing, and things have finally settled into a new normal. Brianna is slowly earning back trust and getting more time with the kids. She seems to have accepted that Greg and I aren't going anywhere and has stopped trying to sabotage our marriage. Lily and Ben are thriving. They're doing well in school, have lots of friends, and seem genuinely happy. They have a good relationship with Brianna now that it's not clouded by manipulation and conflict. And they've grown even closer to me and Zoe as we've weathered this storm together. Going through this ordeal showed us both how committed we are to each other and our own blended family. We've learned to communicate better and lean on each other for support. I won't say it's all been easy. There are still challenges as there are in any family, but I'm so grateful for how far we've come. We're not just surviving, we're thriving. If there's one thing I've learned from this whole experience, it's the importance of putting the children first in any co-parenting situation. Kids should never have to be used as weapons or pawns in adult conflicts. With patience, clear boundaries, and a commitment to healthy communication, it is possible to overcome even the most difficult co-parenting challenges. To anyone out there dealing with a similar situation, my advice is this: document everything, seek professional help, both legal and psychological, and always keep the best interest of the children at the forefront. It may be a long and difficult road, but it's worth it to create a stable, loving environment for your family. At the end of the day, family is what you make it. It might not always look conventional. It definitely isn't always easy, but with love, patience, and a whole lot of hard work, you can create something beautiful, even from the most challenging circumstances. Here are my thoughts about the story. Can we talk about Brianna for a hot second? I know we've all had that one ex who just couldn't let go, but this woman takes the cake, frosting, and the whole damn bakery. The way she manipulated those poor kids had me gritting my teeth. Trying to get little Ben to falsely accuse Isabella of inappropriate behavior, that's not just crossing a line, that's pole vaulting over it and setting the pole on fire. And don't get me even started on her showing up drunk at their house. I was half expecting her to go full Fatal Attraction and start boiling rabbits or something. It's like, lady, I get that breakups suck, but there's a difference between being sad and going full-on psycho stalker. But you know what really got me? The way Isabella and Greg handled it all. I gotta give them mad props for keeping their cool through all this drama. If it were me, I probably would have lost it and ended up in a viral video screaming at Brianna in a Walmart parking lot or something, and be ruthlessly bashed online for being a Karen. But no, they took the high road, documented everything, and let the law handle it. That's some serious adulting right there. And can we talk about those kids for a minute? Lily and Ben. Man, my heart goes out to them. Being caught in the middle of adult drama is tough enough. But having your own mother trying to turn you against your dad and stepmom, that's some heavy stuff for a kid to deal with. I'm just glad they had Isabella and Greg in their corner, keeping things stable. It's stories like this that make me realize how messy and complicated real life can be. It's not like the movies where the evil ex just gives up after one big confrontation. This was a long, drawn-out battle that affected everyone involved. It's a reminder that sometimes the hardest fights are the ones that happen after the credits roll, The judge in this case, though, she deserves all the respect judges get and more. The way she laid down the law, no pun intended, on Brianna was so satisfying. I was half expecting her to drop the gavel and be like, "Brianna, you just got served." Well, maybe I've been watching too many legal dramas, but you get what I mean. What really struck me about this whole story is how it shows that families come in all shapes and sizes. Isabella, Greg, Lily, Ben, and Zoe, they're a real family, even if they don't fit the traditional mold. And the fact that they came out stronger after all this drama, that's inspiring as hell. I know some of you might be dealing with your own co-parenting drama or blended family issues. If there's one takeaway from this story, it's that patience and taking the high road can pay off in the long run. Oh, and document everything. Seriously, if this story teaches us anything, it's that having receipts is crucial. In the end, I'm just glad things worked out for Isabella and her family. And even Brianna seems to be getting her act together, which is good for everyone involved. It just goes to show that sometimes even the messiest situations can have a happy ending if you're willing to put in the work. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you again tomorrow.